Hello and welcome to Board Game Gumbo. Today we're unboxing Final Girl from Ryder Games. This is a one-player game, so solo only. Just released off of Kickstarter. This is our delivery. And as you can see, we've got quite a bit of content here. We have everything from the Kickstarter except for the mystery box, and we'll be going through each of these one by one. So this will be kind of a long video. I will put timestamps in the bottom if you are interested in any specific part of the Kickstarter. You can jump just to that part of the video. But I think we're actually going to start with the playmat, which is underneath here, because I think it would make a nice backdrop for the rest of the content. So let's start with that. All right, so let's get into our playmat first. Kind of interested to see what the is in the playmat, because I know this game has several different sort of maps, so as well as one primary map. So I'm kind of interested to see what's included in this. So we got several different maps here, as you can see. Go ahead and get all these out. So this is going to be our main board here. And in the base game, you'll see as we get to it that these are cardboard in the base game. If you've ever played Hostage Negotiator by Ryder, a lot of this is going to look similar to you. So you have this track here. This track determines how many dice you roll on a given action, and you can increase or decrease this track to get better rolls, and then it will increase for various reasons, and then you get more difficult rolls. If it ever gets here and you subtract, you instead get time. If you ever get here and it adds, you instead increase. I think it's called the it's essentially the difficulty of the person you're fighting, but I forget the name that they use for it. You have your time track here. Time is how you do your actions. So every action you play on your turn is going to be a card, and those cards may have different costs to them, different time costs. So you may do 4 actions on your turn, and that'll cost you 4 time, or you could do 4 actions on your turn, and that will cost you 8 time. It just depends on the cards you play. You have spots for the girl you're playing as, because each of the expansions adds 2 different girls with special powers on them. So you have a lot of variability there. The more expansions you get, obviously. Your health total, which I believe this would be for the for the final girl, and then some other things in here, spots to keep tokens and whatnot. So we'll see a lot of this repeated in the base game, but this is just the mat that replaces it. And then you have the other mat, which is going to hold all the other information. So whenever you play a game, you are going to select a final girl, and again, you'll have several different choices. You're going to select a killer. Each killer has its own board, which will go here, and then you're going to select a location. Now, some killers, they come with a location, but you can play any location you want. So, like, I believe the first one, his name is Hans. You can play as Hans, and then Hans has a location that's specific to him, but you can play any other location you want. You can mix and match. You have spots for dark powers here. And this is all the bad guy, basically. So the other map was all our character, and this is all the bad guy. So the bad guy can have dark powers. This is actually the item deck for different locations on the board, setup cards. Again, just areas for everything. The event deck and the tarot deck, and we'll see these, and I'll explain what they mean as we get through the core box. These spots here are extra spots, so they're like overflow spots. So if you get a location that has 6 victims in it, that's going to look clunky on the board. It's going to look you're going to have to stack them up on the board. So they give you these little spots and these little indicators which you can put on the board. And again, we'll see that when we get into it. But those are the 2 main boards for the game, or actually it's 3 boards, but they give you these mats to sort of have a spot to put them. So they're kind of nice. We'll see as we get into the rest of the game what your opinion on them is. So let's go ahead and jump into the core box. Now, as you saw at the beginning of the video, we have several of the expansions. They actually don't call them expansions. I forget what they call them, but those will add new content. But those will also give you your bad guys, your locations, and your characters to play as. This core box doesn't give you any of that. So to play the game, you need the core box, but you also need at least one of the other boxes to play. So when we get into this and you see that there's no no character in it, no villains in it, you'll understand why. Another thing they did, which is really clever, is all of these boxes are magnetically closed. So they got little clasps on them, which are very nice and actually serve a purpose once we get into the episode boxes. And this one is just a nice inclusion. So here's our rule book. Again, this is sort of the main attraction of the game, because this will determine your roles and your time. All the different components we have. We do have meeples for the killer and the final girl, but you saw that we also have the figure pack, which is an add-on that we'll go through. So we won't really be using those meeples as we play. And we'll see all these components as we get into them. So the first box is Hans and Camp Happy Trails, and that is this box here. So that's kind of the starting box, and they give explanations based off of those two, but those two are not actually in here. That's in that separate box. So just something to keep in mind is if you get the core box, you are not actually going to be able to play. So you need one of the other boxes. Setup is basically just where you put meeples on the board. We'll see more of that as we get into the specific episode boxes. Explains all the different cards, all the different iconography. So right now I'm basically just looking at layout, seeing if anything looks out of place. What you want from a rulebook is obviously something that's concise, doesn't repeat itself multiple times, but in a single reading, you kind of understand what's going on. So that's what we're looking at. All the different iconography on the terror cards, which is how the bad guy moves. Obviously, the objective of the game is to knock out the bad guy and not be knocked out yourself. That's essentially the way the game ends. Either the killer kills you or you kill the killer. As far as I know, there's no other outcome in the game. So yeah, the game ends as soon as you have killed the killer or you are dead. In the rare case that both happen at the same time, you are still victorious because you accomplished your goal, even if it required the ultimate sacrifice. So there's no like moral victories here, really. Or I guess that is the moral victory, but there's no other victory conditions. It's either you kill the bad guy or he kills you. There are ways to make the game harder. So there are these epic dark power cards. The bad guys will get dark power cards during the course of the game usually, but some of them are more difficult than others. So they suggest you don't include these epic ones unless you really want a hard fight. Okay, so an index, which is nice. And then on the back, just sort of a cheat sheet of all the iconography. Normally, I'd want this like on a card, but since it's a solo game, like this is pretty perfect. Turn summary, how the action cards work, and then icon reference is pretty much all you want in a cheat sheet. So we do have a little bit of punchboard here. Again, we have these sort of overflow zones. If you don't have the mats, they come in cardboard, which honestly I might prefer, because with the cardboard, you can put it wherever you want it, whereas the mat, it has a specific section. And then little tokens to represent those things. These are health tokens. This is kind of interesting. So at the start of the game, you're going to give the final girl and the bad guy one of these health tokens. One of the black health tokens. You can see that there's black ones and there's white ones. And this is going to be hidden information. So this is a little bit of where the variability in the game comes. As you lose your last health, this represents basically your final health, both for you and for the bad guy. So as you lose your final health, you have the option of sort of, in that very quintessential horror theme coming back to life, off stage, clearly. So you flip it over, and so now you're actually going to go back to 2 health. So instead of getting another black token and that repeating itself, instead you're going to get a white token, and then you're going to get enough health to get up to that 2 health. And then obviously this will be your final life regardless. But some of these, that one has 3, some of them have none on them. So if you get to your last health or the bad guy's last health and you flip that over and there's none on it, you've actually defeated them. So that's kind of interesting. It's a very simple mechanic, but I think thematically very appropriate. So again, this would be our main board if we didn't have the mat. It explains the different action phases, how everything works. The action phase is basically where you play cards. Again, cards cost time. Then there's, the action phase, yes, is where you play cards. Planning phase is where you can purchase cards. So time that you do not spend basically becomes a resource where you can buy upgraded cards. So you may not want to spend all of your time. Then the killer is going to resolve drawing a terror card and also doing its action. Then there's a panic phase, which is basically like a cleanup. It's a resolution phase. Not a lot's happening. It's very scripted. And then the upkeep phase, again, is also very scripted. So really the only two times where things are really happening in the game are the action phase, and that's where you're taking your actions, and then the killer phase where the enemy is taking your actions. Everything else is sort of, upkeep or things like that. So here we have the other components you'll get in the base game. Nice little organizer with a little plastic top on it so your stuff doesn't rattle around. Actually, a lot of what we're going to get through in the other episodic boxes are going to fit in here very nicely. So I'm going to come back to this at the very end of the video and just show you how everything fits together. So we have our dice. I like these dice a lot. I like them in Hostage Negotiator, and I like them here. So 5s and 6s are successes, and stars are obviously represent successes. 4s and 3s are successes if you discard 2 cards. So pretty self-explanatory, the iconography there. And then 1s and 2s are complete misses. And that's how all the dice work. There are no upgraded dice like I think there is in Hostage Negotiator. At least in the career mode, I believe there were upgraded dice. But obviously that's something that can change as they come up with expansions. And they've already announced they're going to do a second season Kickstarter. So I assume there will be some extra goodies in that one as well. So some small pieces here. I typically don't like pieces this small in board games because they get lost so easily. But these are just little tracker tokens. So some of the different equipment that you can get throughout the course of the game will have like a certain number of uses. So say it has 3 uses. You'll put 3 of these tokens on it so you can track when you use it and you have no more of them. This represents the killer's, I think it's Bloodlust. I couldn't remember it earlier, but I think it's Bloodlust. And that's basically how difficult he is. So like this will go up when he kills a victim, right? So the token will move up. And we'll see more of that when we actually get to the bad guys unboxing. But there are spots for all these little components in here, which is very nice. You can you can basically play from this box. You don't actually have to empty it, which is very helpful. More tokens here. So we've got our time token to keep track of our actions. We've got our final girl and our killer tokens here. And then all our health tokens. So the final girl will have health. It'll depend on which one you're playing, how much health they have. And then the bad guy will have health as well. So we'll put those there. And then here are all of our different victims. So standard victims are yellow, and these will be placed out on the game board at the start of the game. And depending on which bad guy you're playing as will determine your setup. So we'll see more of that as we get into the episode boxes. But obviously these victims are something that the bad guy is going to go after and something that you're trying to protect. So all of these will fit into these very nice little rows for easy removal and setup. You have 3 ones in different colors. Those are special victims, and those will only come out when you draw certain event cards. So they represent different types of victims. And this is going to take me a minute to get all these in here. But as you can see, this will make playing the game a lot easier because you can just pull from the box. You don't have to dump all these out and then have a big pile of them. You've got these nice little orderly rows to pull your victims from. And also, will stay in there as you're moving around. And then we have our starting cards. So again, I mentioned you need at least one of the episode boxes to play this game. Although the core game gives you your starting cards. You notice starting cards, you'll be able to identify starting cards because they'll all have this 0 marker on them. So you'll start with walk, a couple walks, a short rest, a focus, 2 focus, and a weak attack. And then every other card is going to have a cost to it. And this is what you do during your planning phase. You can buy these cards with any leftover time you have. And I'm going through these pretty quick, but obviously this is a big part of the game. It's sort of a big deck builder because you can add these cards into your deck. You also notice that some of the cards are blue, whereas most of them are black. Blue are basically reaction cards. So when something happens, you can play these cards. Typically, it'll reduce damage that you take, and then sometimes give you damage back that you can do to the bad guy. And you see some of the cheaper ones here are guard. There's a couple guards. So there's 2 guards and there's 1 retaliate. Your basic action cards are really all your action cards. Whenever you play them, you're going to play them to the table. You're going to make a roll. Again, that roll is dependent on this, where this horror token is determining how many dice you're going to roll. And then you're going to check your successes. And based on your successes, you're going to get an action. And then after your action, it's going to tell you how much time that costs. So if you get 2 successes, you move up to 2 spaces, and then you lose 1 time. Alternatively, you could have gotten no successes, and now you have a choice. You can either just lose 2 time, or you can move up to 1 space, lose a health, and lose 2 time. Again, all your starting cards are obviously your weakest cards. And so you're going to play all these cards, or you're going to play any number of these cards that you want to. And then you're going to have a planning phase. Planning phase allows you to buy cards from the market, which would be all of these upgraded cards. The only thing is any card you play on your turn, you cannot then buy on the planning phase. So if I played all these cards, right? I just decide this is my starting hand. On my first turn, I want to play everything in my hand, right? I'm going to play these cards kind of out of the way over here. And then during my planning phase, I can buy from the market, which will be over here. And then after I buy, I can take all these cards that I just played and put them in the market. So I can buy them on the next round. So you can't just basically play all your 0 cards, buy all your 0 cards back, play all your 0 cards, buy all your 0 cards back, ad nauseum. You have to basically have a down phase, a downturn where you can't buy them back. And again, everything sort of fits back in there. We've got our little plastic top, which will keep everything from moving around. And like I said, when we get into the episode boxes, the Final Girl cards will fit into here. They'll go into this box. So we'll be adding to this when we get to the very end of the video. But let's move on from the core box and let's get into one of the episode boxes. And we're going to start with this one because this is the one they use in the explanation in the rulebook. And it's sort of the easiest one, or the least complicated one, I guess I should say. So we'll get into this real quick. So each of these episode boxes is going to give you a couple things. One, it's going to give you 2 final girls to play as. So this is one of them. And on the back, you'll have the other one. They're also going to give you 1 bad guy. In this case, it's Hans the Butcher, and you can see him back here. And it's going to give you 1 location. Location is going to be Camp Happy Trails. So this is actually really clever, the way they've done this with the magnetic locking system. So as you open this, the actual exterior of the box becomes your bad guy. So this is really cool. And if you're using the mat like this, your killer would go right here. And then if we want to, I don't want to dump everything out here, but if I pull the back of it off, the back does the same thing and becomes the location. And then this becomes our location board, like so. So let's go back to the front of the box, which is Hans. Hans just gives you a little component list. If he had any special rules, it'd be on the back here. Again, Hans is sort of the introductory killer, so there's no special rules for him. But just a little cheat sheet there. Let's see what else we got in here. We got our own little box here. So that the way they did this is you need the core box, right? All of your Final Girl stuff and all of your setup stuff is going to be in the core box, including your victims. And then after that, you're going to pick a killer and you're going to pick a location. And it may be, you may pick Hans and Camp Happy Trails. So all you need is this box. But if you pick Hans and a different location, you may need 2 boxes. But essentially you can, with the core box, you can play a game by mixing and matching, and you only have to grab those boxes. So you don't have to have everything with you all the time. So here is our cards for Hans. So I'm just going to say that that's not going to fit sleeve cards, which is a little disappointing, but it's kind of the standard now, so I've gotten used to it. So in a killer setup here, you're going to have tarot cards. Now, all of these are specific to Hans. Because they're specific to Hans, they have this icon on him, or on the card. And that's going to be on every card. Because what you're going to do is you're going to mix these tarot cards with your location tarot cards. So you need to be able to filter those back out at the end of the game. So every round you're going to draw a tarot card, and they're going to do something like this one. This is going to advance the horror on the main board, and then it's going to tell you who Hans is targeting. So in this case, he's targeting basically the person closest to him. He doesn't care if it's the final girl, which is this icon in the back, or a victim, which is the icon in the front. He just wants the closest person. He's going to move one space. We'll look at his board later. This movement could actually be several spaces, and then he's going to attack, and his attack does a certain amount of damage. And you're going to draw one of these tarot cards every round. If you ever don't have a tarot card left, then Hans basically goes Super Saiyan, or I forget exactly what they call it, but there's a card in here that he gets more powerful. Here are our final girls. So every final girl has a special action, but you're not going to start with that action. You're actually going to start on this side. You have to save a certain number of victims before you get access to this special power. So as you save victims, you're going to put those meeples on this card in any order you want, and you're going to get whatever's below it. So this will give you a health back. This will move your time up to. You get to move one space, or you get to take the planning action card for free. So as you save victims, they're going to sit on these spots until all 5 are full. And then you get to flip the card over, and you have her special action, which is once per action phase. If an enemy is within 2 spaces, you may move to that enemy's space for free. So Reiko is going after the bad guy. And then we have Lori here. Her special power, whenever you're in the same space as an enemy and inflict damage, you do an additional damage. Again, she has to save several victims before she gets her special power. You notice that she has to save 6, where Reiko only has to save 5. And she's got different bonuses on hers from Reiko. So a little bit of variability there with what final girl you choose to play as. And here we have Hans's cards. So again, they're adding variability in a lot of different ways in this game. So you saw like the health tokens that you flip over, maybe they get an extra life. This is another way that they do this. So there are 3 of these sort of like ultimate ability cards that you're going to choose one of, and you're going to put it here. And this is the card that's going to flip over if you run out of tarot cards. So you see a mark here that's basically tarot cards. If you can't flip a tarot card, you're going to flip this over instead. And this is going to make Hans more powerful. He's going to draw a second dark power card when this card is revealed. And now his ability goes from targeting anything and attacking once to targeting anything, moving twice, and attacking once. So he gets a lot stronger. And then we have these cards as well, which are going, again, there are 4 of them. So there's a little bit of variability there. And those are going to go down here. So let's go ahead and take a look at our villain board while we're here. So when you set up your villain, he starts with a certain number of terror. And again, that's that main board. He has a certain number of health. He's going to have 2 of these cards, one on top and one on bottom. He's got spots here for his minor dark powers. You've got designated spots here if you have the mat. And then he has this tracker here, which is his, again, I always can't remember what they call it, but basically how angry he is. I think it's called Bloodlust. And that's what we track with this token. So his Bloodlust is going to start here. And as he defeats victims or does other things, it's going to move up. Every time it moves up, it can change how much damage he does on an attack. It can change how much movement, or it can give him certain abilities. So if it moves up here, the horror is going to go up 1, but none of his stats change. When it gets here, his horror goes up 1, and now whenever he does an attack, it's going to hit for 3 instead of 2. When he gets here, his movement is now 1 for every one of these icons. Is now 2 for every one of these icons instead of 1. And he also gets to flip this bottom power. So now for every victim that Hans kills, he recovers a health. He was already getting a Bloodlust, because all villains basically get a Bloodlust for killing stuff, but now he also gets a health. And then obviously this can go up more and more, and he gets stronger and stronger. So that is Hans. All of his cards are going to fit back in his box. And while we're here, I'm going to take a look at the figures so I can fit his in here. So here is the miniatures pack. It is called Miniatures Series 1, and I think that's probably foreshadowing. But since we're here, we might as well put his figure in his box. And that gives us a good chance to look at the figures for the first time. So you could just keep the figures here in this box, but I'm going to pull them out. We have Hans here. He's wearing a pig mask and he's got a sledgehammer. So don't want to meet him in a dark alley. And he'll just go right there. And that is our villain box. You could put other things in here. Like some of the villains will have extra tokens. They'll actually have sometimes more than one figure. So there's more space there than you need. You could actually put some of the final girls in here if you want to save them in there. But that's all we have for Hans. We'll deal with putting everything back together at the very end. And then we're going to take our board here. So one thing they did, because these because this stuff kind of comes off weird, is they've kind of put an image of where he goes. So you see that this is his board. So if I accidentally put it on this way, it'll fit, but that's not the way it's supposed to go. Instead, it's supposed to go like this. And you know that because that image is kind of shadowed on the box. And they'll just work like that. And we flip it over, and now we have our location, which is Camp Happy Trails. So again, component list, basic rules to Camp Happy Trails. If there were any special rules, which there aren't, it'd be on the back. We've got a selection of cards. These are all terror cards. These are going to shuffle into the villain deck of your choice. So if it's Hans, they'll shuffle into Hans's deck. And this also has an icon to let you know that this is Camp Happy Trails, so that you can get them sorted out at the end. Camp Happy Trails has a couple sort of special things that happen, and they've got tokens for it. So we'll just pop those out real quick. And we've got easy storage for them already built into the box. And then the smaller cards here. So we got setup cards, and again, adding variability in a lot of different spaces. There are several different setup cards. You just flip it over. It tells you where the final girl starts on the board, where the killer starts, and how many victims to put in what zones. So we haven't really talked about the location yet. Here's our location board. Again, setup is going to tell us where we put everything. There are numbers between the areas. That's mostly based off of how the victims move. So if the victims end up in a space with the killer, they try to run away, and you're going to roll a dice, and based on the dice result, they're going to move to a certain zone. You also have yellow zones. Those are locations where you can search for equipment, and we'll look at items in a minute. And then you have these sort of protected zones. These are the exits. These are where the victims can leave the board, and this is how the final girl gets her power up, right? By collecting a certain number of victims. So when victims are in this area, the final girl can move to this area and basically shepherd them off the board. And she collects them, and it gives her abilities. Otherwise, the victims are just going to be around the board. And when the final girl moves into a spot and then leaves, she can take, I think it's 2 victims with her. So again, that's our location. Here are our items. So every location is going to have a set number of item cards that make sense for that location. And you're going to shuffle these up, and I think it's deal 4 to each location. And then the top one is going to be face up. So you're going to know what the top one is. This is only something that happens at setup. So say there's 4 cards at an area, right? And I go there, I search the area, I find this card. I don't flip this card face up. This is only something that happens at setup. The top card gets flipped over. And so you're going to have a total of 12 items. There are more than 12 items. So again, some variability there. And when these run out, that's it. Like you can only find 12 items, even though there are more. But I'll take a look. So some of the items here, you can find a bear trap. You can find fireworks, pepper spray. So again, the archery bow has a certain number of uses. So it'll use those pieces that we found in the core box. Equipment here. So equipment is going to take a certain number of hands. You have 2 hands, so you can hold 2 hands worth of equipment. So if you have the aluminum bat, you can't hold anything else in your hands. It has a range. So the range is specific. So If I had a revolver, I have to be 1 space away. I can't be 1 space or lower away. I have to be exactly 1 space away. And then if I hit with the revolver, I'm going to do an extra damage. The bat is pretty much the same way. I have to be in this spot with the killer, and I'm going to do 1 extra damage if I do damage while attacking with the bat. And then, of course, there are some special abilities on the weapons as well. But you can see the different items available to you. Defensive items, attack items, utility items. Some just give you an ability. So this one is discard to reroll any or all of your dice. So some are discard, some are once a turn. So this is once per action phase. So a good selection of items there. Those will go back here. Our setup items, and then we have event items. So sometimes when you draw tarot cards, it'll tell you to also draw an event item or an event card. And of course, there we go. So this one is place 2 new victims in the space where you started the game, and then advance horror, and then draw an event card. And then event cards do different things. 1 less victim will follow you while this event card is out. That's pretty bad. When exactly 2 victims are in a space and one of them is killed, the other immediately dies as well. So some interesting events here. I'll sort of flip through them. We'll be going through a lot of these event cards, so I'm not going to really explain all of them. You see this one adds a new victim. The victim closest to you is now your boyfriend. If the boyfriend dies in your space, start the next action phase with 12 time. So this will put out this will change one of the yellow meeples to that blue meeple. And then this will change a yellow meeple to a white meeple, and so on. Okay, so those will all fit back in there with our tarot cards. Our tokens have a nice little spot for them. Everything's kind of got its spot to go to. And then finally our board will snap on like so. And everything is securely in there. And we've got our 2 new final girls, which we are going to add to the core box when we get that far. But let's move on to another episode box. We've got a couple more to get through. So we've got location is Sacred Groves here. And then our killer is Inkanyamba. I butchered that, I know it. Let's take a look at our bad guy here. Of course, we got our 2 new final girls as well. So here is our new bad guy. Again, aside from, some slight differences here, this guy moves starting with 2, and he only needs to go up 3 spaces before he gets his power. A lot of this is going to look very similar to every other bad guy. So our component list, this guy does have special rules. So he's got special setup and 2 special rules when playing. This is obviously part of his special rules, but otherwise it's pretty much going to be the same. So we're going to have a deck of cards here. Oh, we've got hidden things. Let's see what this does. Okay, so these are kind of cool. I should probably look in the first box for these, but this is an extra item that can only be used when you're using this specific final girl. That's pretty cool. So I'm probably going to add these to the main box, because when you select your final girl, you'll kind of select your extra pieces. But it says for Adeline's eyes only. So if you pick Adeline or Adelaide, that you should grab this little file as well. So that's kind of cool. So let's look at the rest of our bad guy stuff. So remember to check beneath your organizers, and I will go back and do that for the other stuff I've already opened for special stuff. So we've got some extra action cards here. I'll probably just go ahead and put these back into this box, I guess. Or I guess I should add them to the main box. We've got our 2 new final girls. Again, they're going to work pretty much the same way. It's just these bonuses and their special powers are going to be different. So We've got, these are terror cards here. So again, terror cards get drawn once per game. When you run out of them, your bad guy goes into berserk mode. Little icon, so you know that these belong to this bad guy. I won't go through all of them, but take a look at those. These are the dark power cards. So dark power cards, which I didn't explain in the first box, dark power cards get put out onto the board and get health tokens added to them. And essentially, when you hit the bad guy while he has one of these out, you do damage to the dark power card instead of him. And when all these tokens are gone, he loses this ability. So this is just an extra ability that he has. Every time his wrath is increased, it increases by an additional 1. And once during upkeep, you make a horror roll. If you get a success, nothing happens. If you don't get a success, you increase his wrath by 1. So these are like minor buffs that he gets that you probably don't want him to have. And then we've got his 2 sort of power cards. So again, 3 of them. This is his basic ability, and then when this flips over, he has his powered up ability. We need a miracle. That doesn't sound good. And then his sort of his dark power ability. And so this is his epic one. So again, they suggest if you want to make the game harder to include this, but not to include it right away. Okay. So we'll put all of these in the base box. And then let's go and grab his figure. Where's he at? So these look like, this is him. There he is. The minis are very good. I mean, I got no complaints with the minis. Maybe you could, if they had sculpted bases, that'd be cool. But this guy's leaning, but I think that's on purpose. I think he's supposed to be leaning like that. So that's, I don't think a bending issue. I think that's just how he was designed. But he's pretty cool looking. And he will go right there. Okay. So that is that bad guy, whose name I'm not going to butcher again. And that board will flip over and go on like that. And then our location is the Sacred Groves. So here's our Sacred Groves. Again, our component list and our special rules. This one does have special rules, as you can see. Another Divine Wrath card. And then into our stuff. So let's see if we got a little, hey, we do. Okay, so it looks like there's one of these for each of the final girls. So I'll have to go back and get all of these so we can include them in our base game. Or our core box, I should say. Barbara's got a rifle. So I think, if I remember correctly, Hostage Negotiator did stuff like this too. So Van Ryder just likes hiding things in their games. So a little extra tokens here, a little extra board, and then our terror cards for the Sacred Grounds. We've got some tokens that we'll just punch out and put in there. Our different setup cards. Again, pretty straightforward. 6 in the center is a lot. The item cards for the Sacred Grounds. Some of these I can see are repeats from the first location, but obviously some of them are more thematic to the Sacred Grounds themselves, like the incense. And then our event cards. Okay. So that is everything for Sacred Grounds. We'll put all that back. Put our little container lid on there, just so nothing rattles around. And put that back together. And that is box number 2. Box 3. And we got a total of 5 of these. So, again, feel free to skip ahead if there's a particular box you're interested in. This is Geppetto. The bad guy is Geppetto. And he's got dolls, so that's a little creepy. Geppetto's components, he's got a special setup, as well as special rules for his puppets. Let us get our hidden envelope. Get this back in here. Okay. So if you are playing as Asami, you get a knife belt. Okay. I think Asami's a badass. So if you did not have the miniatures, this would be your puppets. So again, all of the killers are represented by a meeple, which is in the core box. We have the figures expansion, so we've got figures for all these guys. But if you don't have the figure expansion, you would just have the cardboard and then the meeple for the killer. So Charlie is one of our new final girls, her special ability, and Asami with her knife belt. And we will add those to the core box. Here are our tarot cards for Geppetto. Again, our little icon, just so we remember which cards belong to who. It's very necessary. Like it's a good addition. I'm glad they added it, but they kind of had to with the way that the game is set up, where you're mixing villain cards and location cards together. You kind of need that. So I'm glad it's there. If it wasn't there, it would be noticeable. So here is where our puppets, little card for our puppets, and then Geppetto's cards themselves. Again, he'll have one of these 3. Here is his basic action: spawn a puppet, move towards a victim, or spawn a puppet, target a victim, and then move towards it. So his puppets are going towards victims, and then he is going to whatever's closest, the final girl or a victim, and he's going to attack once. And then he gets an upgraded one when he can't draw a tarot card. And then his sort of dark power ability he gets when he upgrades his bloodlust a certain number of times. And so now each of his puppets ignores the first damage dealt to it each turn. So his puppets are more durable. And we do have figures for him. So here is Geppetto himself. And then we actually have figures for his 3 puppets, which it appears to be the same sculpt on each one, but not a bad sculpt. I also should point out that their names are on the bottom of each one of them. So that's probably going to be useful when we get into like the final girl figures, to be able to have their name on the bottom, just so you can find them easier. So that is Geppetto. We'll put all his stuff back in his box and put his lid on. Oop. Our rule sheet tried to escape there. And then flip over to the Carnival of Blood is our new location. There's the carnival. Again, these locations are fairly similar. I mean, they're, other than the names and the art, they're spots on a board, right? So special setup. A lot of special setup for this one. Let's find our little extra cards. This should be for Charlie. Let's see what Charlie gets. Charlie gets a giant hammer. All right. Our little tokens will just easily go into the organizers they provided. And then our new tarot cards with the icon for our location. And then a reference for the trap cards, which is nice because apparently there's more than one. So here are our event cards. Here are item cards. So here's our setup cards again. And our item cards. So there's some red item cards. So these are the traps. Okay, so the traps are in the item cards. That's interesting. Super lucky dice. Okay, so this one is you re-roll any number of dice, and then you roll one die, and then you have the option, or you have the possibility of actually keeping this. So this is not necessarily a discard. Okay. So all of that will go back in here. Okay. That is box 3.
Box 4.
Our new bad guy is the Poltergeist. Has no health and cannot be attacked. Oh boy. Our special setup, special rules. The Poltergeist has no health and cannot be attacked, damaged, or killed. Ignore any effects that would damage the Poltergeist. The only way to win against the Poltergeist is to find Carolyn and save her by reaching an exit while she is with you. Okay. Interesting. We'll find our extra cards down here. And Selena is going to start with a flashlight. We've got an extra item card here for Carolyn. Oh, there's multiple. So we've got one for Carolyn, which is our objective now. And we've got one for her doll. So I guess, okay. Interesting. Our two new final girls are Alice and Selena. So here's Selena. She only needs 4 victims to flip over. And then Alice needs 6 to get her special ability. We've got our tarot cards. Our minor dark power cards. Here's our Poltergeist's sort of special ability cards, her basic action. And then when she gets really angry, you place the Poltergeist in your space, and then she moves towards either the final girl or a victim, whoever's closest, and attacks twice. That sounds pretty bad. And then sort of her dark power card. All of your moves of 2 or more spaces are reduced by 1 space. So okay, so we'll put our item cards in there because those are specific to this enemy. And let's find our mini, which is right here. And it looks like we got a mini for Carolyn as well, so we'll grab that. So here's Carolyn. And here's our Poltergeist. Put all that back together. Put our lid back on. And our location is Creech Manor. That's just creepy. I don't want that. Let's see. Special rules. One-way movement spaces. Okay. Alice gets a shotgun. The last girl got a flashlight and you get a shotgun. That seems unfair. All right, so our event cards for Creech Manor, again, our little icon, or our tarot cards, I should say. Little cardboard pieces. Setups. Let's look at our event cards. Looks like all the event cards use the 3 special victims. Of course, now that I say that, this one doesn't. Oh, there it is. So this one has ghost hunters. So you put in all 3 of the new ones. That's interesting. And then items. So again, some of these items are just the same items that you see in every location, but some of them are specific. So ancient text, crucifix, all these are specific to this location. Put all our stuff back together. Yes, I've purposefully kept that there the entire time because I don't want to see that creepy damn clown. All right. I don't do clowns. Okay? Leave me alone. So this is our final episode box. Dr. Fright. Kind of looks like Freddy to me. Yep. That's definitely Freddy. This one has a setup rule book. Oh boy. I think Freddy may be the most difficult one. Oh, let's get our little special. Yeah. Gotta go back into our first box and get our extra item. Nancy's machetes. All right, so what do we got? Here's our tarot deck. Let's look at our heroines first. So our final girls, Nancy and Sheila, and their special abilities. Here are, was it Dr. Fright's sort of power-up cards. Yeah, he's definitely mean. And then his dark power cards. So we've got some special cards for the boiler room. Interesting. Okay, that's just... Why? I didn't need to see that today. Okay, all right. Let's... You go away. And then our tarot cards. Of course, he's got a pitchfork, because why not? I don't know. I think the gloves of knives is maybe a little more frightening than the snapped off pitchfork, but that's just me. All right. Where is Dr. Fright's mini? Let's see. Pretty easy one to pick out. The only one with a pitchfork. Okay. Let's put all that back. Make him go away. Yes. No more of that. That little rule book likes to slide out. Okay, and then Maple Lane, of course, is our location, because, yeah, that makes sense. Special rules. This one isn't a book this time, at least, but still quite a few different special rules. Let's get our little hidden item first. I really like these organizers, even though I'm kind of fighting with them. It's taking them out to get the cards. You only have to do once, and that's really the only difficult aspect of this. Otherwise, they're outstanding. I mean, it's so easy, especially because you're going to be mixing and matching a lot whenever you do these things. To just, you don't have to worry about this. This one's got a lot of punchboard in it, or at least a lot more than the other ones did. And these tokens are clearly meant to be hidden, I guess. We got, I guess the red side is up, and then there's got hidden information. A lot of these are leaves. Yep. I don't know. Obviously, it's part of the special rules. So the rest of our guys here. I'm assuming these 3 are blank just because they had 3 left and they didn't need them, but I'm going to go ahead and keep them in here just in case. Our small cards. So again, setup. Let's look at our events. I like that all these are pretty thematic to the location. I've seen some repeats, but not a ton. But they're all very specific. And then the items are kind of hit or miss. The items are like half of them are stuff I've seen before, and then half of them are sort of new to the location. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you kind of, there's some items that you just specifically need, right? So you need items that give you more actions. That's kind of like a basic tenet of these types of games. More things that give you time. So this one is the first card I think I've seen that has a bonus if you get 3 successes, which would be really hard to do, but still. Okay, we'll put those in the core box, and then our terror cards for our location. All right, so that was the last of our episode boxes. We do still have a few things. So one, we have this Vignette Expansion. So let's go take a look at that. I always kind of assume these wrappers things don't work, but that one did, so good for them. So let's see what this is. Area Vignette Expansion that can be used in combination with any location, one of which is included in each of the Final Girl feature film boxes. Okay. So we got some punchboard for some little red birds. And then the same on both sides. Okay. I really know nothing about this, unfortunately. So these are new Dark Power cards. We got a new Final Girl, Melanie. Interesting. Okay, so this is basically a scenario, it looks like. A new scenario that is specific to, I guess not this specific Final Girl. So, special rules for a Vignette Expansion requires the Final Girl core box in any location from a feature film box. Okay. So this is just basically a new scenario. There's no killer board. Instead, there's, you know, a flock of birds basically that is chasing you around. So it's Hitchcock, right? It's I forget the name of the movie, but it's the Hitchcock movie where the swarm of birds, I think it's just called Birds, is chasing you down. So that's kind of interesting, and that really leads them a lot of opportunities for doing more of these, because I assume this is a lot easier to produce than this. So they can just do this and they could make it, so this one is basically replacing the killer. They could do these that replace the location, but this is an interesting option for them. That's pretty cool. I like the fact that they're at least doing that, right? So it shows what they can do going forward. We also have this lore and scenario book. So this scenario book is kind of interesting. One, you get lore on the bad guys, and if that's something you're interested in, that's not really something that I get interested in, but so that is included in here. But I'm more interested in the scenarios. So the scenarios are combinations of different things. So this is telling you to use Hans and that location, which I don't know which one that is offhand. Oh, it's Camp Happy Trails. So this is kind of like the this is the one that you would assume to start with, right? So you're going to do this one because it comes in the same box. So you'd probably do this one anyway, but there's a scenario here with a specific final girl, a specific setup, and all these different items. And I wonder if there's like I don't see like a difficulty rating on them. Yeah, there's no sort of like, you know, this is what you play if you want the hardest difficulty, or there's the easiest difficulty. But they're basically just scenarios. Scenarios using a specific villain and then a specific location. So this would be cool to just like go through, right, as you're playing. Just being mindful of doing all of them, right? And then sort of, if you want to play this game a lot, I mean, this is a lot of content when you're mixing all this stuff together. So I like this. I like the scenarios. The lore, I just don't get into lore. I guess if you're a horror fan and you really want to know about these villains, but I like these scenarios a lot. What else do we have back here? And then we have some using actually the extra expansion with the birds. So that's cool too. And then lore for all of your heroines, all your final girls. So they have already announced a second, not edition, but a second Kickstarter for this game. They already are planning to do a second Kickstarter. And one of the things they are planning to do is a box that holds essentially everything. What we have left in here are all of the final girls. So we should have, I believe, 10 of them. 5, 6. So I have 11. So I did 11 for the extra one. That's right. So we should have 11. And so I'll just go through each of these kind of real quickly. If you can remember their names, you were paying more attention than I was. But I like these minis. I mean, these are good minis. I got no problem with them. They got good detail. I like the size of them. They seem a little bit smaller than sort of your standard, 32 millimeter. I'd be interested to know what the size on these are. I don't know offhand. They look just a slight bit smaller. But of course, you got to keep in mind that, you know, you're using those location boards. Those location boards aren't huge. So you don't want a giant figure on them. That's just going to look ridiculous. But I do also like, one, that they have their names on the bottom, right? So if you are having a hard time remembering who's who, their name is on the bottom. But also they're all holding pretty much a unique weapon, or unique among themselves, right? So like, she's not holding anything, right? Doesn't look like it, at least to me. Who's this? Melanie. I don't know what her special item is, but she doesn't seem to be holding anything. But she's the only one. So this girl's holding 2 swords, or these are machetes, I think. And so we have, I think there's another girl with a sword, but it's like a one-handed sword, or maybe not. I don't see it. But again, so you do have their names on the bottom, but also I think they went through the effort. Oops. I think they went through the effort of making certain that they were visually different enough that you could kind of notice from a glance. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into the first box and find the packages we missed, and then I'm going to put everything back that I can into the first box and see how that goes. So I'll be back in 1 minute. Okay, so here I've got kind of everything how I would put it together, right? So one thing is, so like these extra items for each of the final girls. This isn't my copy. If this was my copy, I'd get rid of all these packages and just have the cards, but it's not. So for now, I'm just going to keep them like this. I was able to get all the cards from Terror of Above into the main organizer, which is really nice. It's just a spot to put them. You could put them in one of the extra boxes just as easily. These I haven't punched out yet because I don't know where to put them, but there is room for them. In the main box itself, I was able to get all of the Final Girl figures in there. I had to get a little creative with what way they were facing, but they all fit in there. I kind of had to put everything else into this area right here, but you know, it's functional. It works. Everything fits. So here we've got all the Terror from Above cards, and then we get into all of our Final Girl cards. So you can see all the different options you have there. And then basically all the things we need, regardless of what bad guy or location we're playing, is now in this core box. So whenever you go to play, you have this core box, which you're always going to need, like so. And then you're going to pick and choose what other ones you want. So if you want to play just 2 places thematically together, you can just grab 1 box. So I'm playing Creech Manor with the Poltergeist. All I need is this 1 box. But if I want to mix and match, say I want to play the Poltergeist in Maple Lane, now I need those 2 boxes. So it kind of helps, limit what you have to take with you. But this isn't so much to carry around that I feel like I can't just bring everything if I wanted to. Like if I wanted to bring everything, I don't feel like, it would be too bulky. So again, that's everything that we got for Final Girl from Ryder Games. That's not including the mystery box. So if you're looking for that, you'll have to go somewhere else. But thank you so much for watching.